And a very warm, and isn't it, welcome to you all. Hello, I'm Rob Elkington, and I'm Director of Arts Connect, and I'll be hosting this webinar where we will be arguing that young people's engagement with heritage is key to levelling up. I'd like to introduce our colleagues Richard, and you'll see Louise a little bit later, who are our BSL interpreters, and we thank them in advance. So this is what's going to happen. First, we're going to hear about the research project that began in 2021 from Dr. Josh Blaymeyer, and he is Research Associate at the Institute for Community Research and Development. And Josh will speak for about 20 minutes. Then we'll hear in more depth from two of the projects that are featuring in the reports, and that's from Saba and Abdul Wais from the Connecting with Yemeni Elders Heritage Project. And then we'll hear from Kenzie, who's from Blaze Arts, for that'll be about another 10 minutes. Then we're delighted Sandra Stancliffe from Historic England will be joining us and be offering her reflections. Then there'll be a chance to answer some of the questions that you may have, and please post them in the Q&A function. And if we don't get around to them all, we do promise to write an answer, and we'll post that up on the website. This session is being recorded, and we'll post that up as well on the Arts Connect website, along with Josh's presentation and other artifacts and documents that have come out of the project, including the report. And we'll also email that to you at the conclusion, so that you've got all the links that you need. Well, it's a really packed hour, so let's get going. Over to you, Josh.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. And so I first want to briefly explore a bit of the background of the project before turning to some of our key findings and recommendations. And so this project emerged from the view that while there's lots of interesting work taking place across the country that engages young people with heritage, there's a real lack of evidence as to the effectiveness of some of those programmes and the outcomes in which they produce. And it was clear from an initial literature review, which we completed last summer, that there's a real gap in knowledge about activities that sort of sit outside of the formal structures of schools, heritage venues and museums. And so the focus in this project was on those projects which are more sort of local and extracurricular. And for instance, the National Lottery Heritage Fund in recent years has led its Young Roots and Kick the Dust programmes, and they very much sort of sit within that space. And the wider context is that heritage organisations are increasingly looking to engage a younger and more diverse audience, and to address the long-standing sort of underrepresentation and exclusion of young people from within sort of formal heritage spaces. And as we know, there's been an upswell of interest amongst heritage, amongst young people in relation to heritage, and lots of questions emerging about sort of who gets to define heritage. And that's been observable very much on social media as well as in the street. And our research was given additional urgency following the UK government's Levelling Up white paper and demands for publicly funded bodies to respond to the key mission of Pride in Place. And that's about sort of restoring a sense of what's called community, local pride and belonging, especially in places in which it's been lost. And in particular, it's those that are described in policy discourse as being left behind. And finally, heritage organisations are increasingly being tasked with demonstrating some of the broader societal benefits that arise from engagements specifically with heritage. So that could be positive social, health and learning outcomes, in order to really inform future activities, to influence public policy and to better make the case for investments within the heritage sector. And the second policy realm that I'm going to touch on today is that of social prescribing. And so in all, then, we hope that this work will prove influential in helping to shape how organisations like Historic England use their resources, their approach to grant making and their future asks to government. And of course, we hope that this work will inform the wider cultural, heritage and youth sectors more broadly. And it's for that reason we're so pleased that many of you have joined us today. And so we first compiled a literature review of existing evidence and spoke with colleagues, practitioners and funders within the heritage and youth sectors. And through this, we identified 7 young people's heritage projects with participants ranging from sort of ages 13 to 21. And the case studies we looked at represented a real diversity across class, race and ethnicity, and sexuality. And some projects were larger and quite significantly resourced, and others smaller, more piecemeal, and sometimes a bit more ad hoc in their design and approach. And it's important to say that they were each sort of youth conceived or youth led in some way. And while they all used and utilized heritage differently, each sort of deployed heritage to address elements of social exclusion, to foster social cohesion, to enhance health and well-being, and to ultimately improve the lives of young people. And so time very much is of the essence, so I just want to very briefly outline those 7 case studies. And so the first is Hope Streets, a large 5-year project that began in 2018, and it was funded through the National Lottery Heritage Fund's programme Kick the Dust, run by Curious Minds. And it was very much a strategic partnership that developed new models of youth engagement and very much placing the heritage sector at the centre of young people's services. It was predominantly museum-led and engaged 11 to 25-year-olds, working in collaboration with artists and other sort of heritage experts. Ignite Yorkshire was run by IVE and was funded through Kick the Dust. And it engaged over 3,000 young people involved in sort of looking at the industrial heritage of Yorkshire through a range of creative projects. The Bright Sparks was formed through Ignite Yorkshire, founded at North Yorkshire Youth, which is a youth charity based in Thirsk. And members of the Bright Sparks worked on heritage craft projects, supported by a youth facilitator, artists and other crafts experts. And the Wild Sparks was sort of a follow-on group from that. And it's important to say that many participants had special educational needs, many of which were homeschooled. And the themes are really around sort of personal development and resilience and gaining transferable skills, as well as providing with these young people with opportunities that they otherwise wouldn't have. NACRO is a charity which assists disadvantaged young people through housing, education and justice services. And we looked in Boston, Lincolnshire, where students also take part in enrichment, which has a cultural heritage component. And this arose following some students' difficulties during a GCSE English language exam, in which they were asked to write a story about travelling on a train. And some of the students responded that they in fact had actually never been on a train before. And so the enrichment activities are very much around promoting social and geographical mobility, social inclusion, overcoming difference, and sort of thinking about tolerance and respect. Standout is an LGBTQ+ heritage project run by a team of young producers aged 13 to 25, working with the youth organisation Blaze Arts. And this project was inspired by the first public meeting held by the Campaign for Homosexual Equality in 1971 at Burnley Library. And Standout was formed to explore local history and queer heritage in Burnley. The group's aims are to revisit and reclaim the struggles of LGBTQ+ people and to combat discrimination within the town. And we'll hear more about this later, but Standout are currently set to host their own Pride event later this year. Connecting with Yemeni Elders Heritage was an intergenerational project delivered by National Museums Liverpool, working with a range of community partners. And the project was inspired by a 14-year-old boy whose grandmother lived with dementia. And the project helps young people of Yemeni heritage to support their parents and grandparents to connect with their cultural heritage and involve co-curating content for a dementia-based app. The project's themes are around bringing heritage institutions closer to local communities, strengthening partnership working, and cultivating intergenerational community dialogue. And finally, the Adventures History Club was formed by 3 Year 10 students at a school in East London. And they'd previously taken part in a school-based National Lottery Heritage Fund project. And this was an all-male cohort of students from mainly British, Asian and Somali backgrounds who'd enjoyed the project and then developed the idea of a follow-up monthly history club, which would include visits to sites in and beyond London. The group's mission was to broaden the horizons and to raise the aspirations of Londoners aged 16 to 25 from diverse communities by facilitating and funding their spare time participation in cultural and heritage activities. And this was a project that took place some years ago. The group are now mostly in their early 30s. And that was really interesting in enabling us to explore some of the longer term impacts of this work. And of course, we have representatives from 2 of the groups here with us today. And we're obviously very much excited to hear from them. So just in terms of what we did, we led workshops and interviews with both young people and some of the adult project coordinators. We observed activities and we've been speaking informally to the young people as well. And at the culmination of the fieldwork, we organised a young people's research showcase, and we were able to hear from projects that were unable to take part in the sort of full fieldwork process. And this again enabled us to really sort of amplify the voices of young people in our work. And so what did we find? Well, there's 5, I think, key findings we want to share with you today. And the first is that young people's participation does support multiple sort of personal, social, health and learning benefits. And these include interpersonal and transferable skills, such as increased confidence, communication, critical thinking, empathy, resilience, independence, teamwork and leadership. There were also specific wellbeing outcomes. So in particular, some of the projects really helped the young people to overcome anxiety and manage stress during the pandemic. These outcomes are in many ways unsurprising and are quite well established within the literature for arts and cultural activities. And participation has also helped some individuals into employment, including specifically in heritage related industries. So this is no doubt important, but actually we sense something much more profound going on. And so this, we say, sort of the tip of the iceberg, if you like, for heritage potential. And so we also found that heritage engagement really offers unique opportunities for fostering identity and belonging, and consequently allowing young people the chance to reinterpret and represent the ways in which that place is understood. And just to share 2 examples with you that are here today. Standout has really disrupted depictions of Burnley, you know, a town in which in public political discourse is described as being left behind. A people who in many ways imagined as being sort of older, white, working class, that's conservative and nostalgic in its outlook, perhaps resentful of some of the recent cultural shifts in society. The projects really sort of challenge that narrative by making visible the hidden histories which reflect social diversity within the town. In doing so, it stakes a claim for all minority people living in Burnley. And it's practically created a safe, inclusive space for LGBTQ+ people. And we've also heard that, you know, hopefully a physical venue may be on its way. Connecting with Yemeni Elders Heritage has invited young people in Liverpool to explore their own Yemeni heritage. It's enabled young Muslim boys and girls to share their own migration experiences and to explore their own identities. and to think about the contribution of Yemeni cultural heritage to shaping modern day Liverpool. In doing so, it's helped young people to feel safe and included. One girl explained that we have a large Yemeni presence, so as a Muslim girl, I can wear what I want and I feel safe. And these activities really align with levelling up policy ambitions to cultivate that sense of community, pride and belonging. By enabling young people to view their place in new ways and to explore new forms of belonging and to construct their own sort of hopes and visions for that place. Thirdly, we then asked how heritage might combat the notion of a so-called socially polarized society. And we found that participating in heritage programs can really help people to confront barriers that lead to social exclusion and can help to build strong, cohesive communities. And we found that these activities are really, really powerful, particularly when they engage the sort of intergenerational and intercultural components, which it also enables young people to establish new networks of friends and collaborators. So again, to give 2 examples, the adventurers conducted interviews with older white residents to learn about their experiences of growing up in the same borough. Perceptions and prejudices were challenged. Commonalities emerged and shared understandings began to form. One of the adventurers remarked that we learned that they were just like us. An equally standout included a strong intergenerational component, which saw young people collecting the oral histories of older community members to, in their terms, learn about the trials and tribulations that the LGBTQ+ community faced on the path to equality. And so, bringing these findings together, fourthly, these outcomes, we argue, are sort of the building blocks for addressing regional inequality or levelling up. And so we say that heritage has a vital role to play in 1, developing individual skills, plus 2, building the necessary social capital, trust and participation, which is integral to healthy civic life. And heritage can be a powerful force for 3, bridging communities, instilling a sense of civic pride and ownership amongst all societal groups. And this is all taking place with the support of policy. So learning from Heritage Lincolnshire, young people are leading the way in revitalising urban spaces through the repair of historic shop fronts and the reuse of vacant buildings. And so heritage has a vital role to play in promoting social mobility. And we say that too often arts and heritage work has tended to equip privileged individuals with these skills, which then ultimately come to be practiced in other, often more prosperous parts of the country through, for example, outward migration and brain drain. But we argue that bringing people and place together on a journey through heritage can provide a mechanism through which young people could be enticed to remain resident in those places, to stake a claim to them, and to contribute towards their revival by making them vibrant and equitable places in which to live. And as I'm going to come on to talk about very shortly, this goes hand in hand with increased collaboration amongst place-based partners. And I think this quote here really captures that these are the words of a 22-year-old living in Stoke. Quite sure if you can see that, but she talks about, I'm a bit of a home bird. But it's about having this history and heritage all around me. You know, I can't really imagine going somewhere else. I've learnt about it, and not having that would be a bit strange. And I think that's why I'd like to stay in this area. And so fifthly, we consider what are the opportunities and challenges for public policy. And so our research shows that young people really value heritage when it enables them to explore aspects of their own identity and to promote alternative ideas. And consequently, the heritage sector needs to stay attuned to these possibilities. there are opportunities and challenges for co-production. And so we see that, yes, there's a need to better capitalise upon the existing skills and expertise of volunteers and professionals within heritage spaces. But that some of the most valuable work has involved a really careful blend of youth inquiry combined with the guidance and leadership of those experts. There's still a need to draw more socially economically marginalised people into these projects. It's more privileged young people that remain overrepresented, despite the examples that we've given today. There's scope for future partnership working. You know, quite simply, this stuff is too big to be left to the heritage sector alone, and that multiple partners stand to gain from investing in these activities. So this is about local authorities, local housing partners, education, healthcare bodies, working with private and third sectors, all working together to deliver these outcomes. And we therefore suggest that widening existing place-based social prescribing models to incorporate heritage could be achieved through a more sort of joined up and better resourced approach. And so finally, besides all this, we want to make sort of 4 specific recommendations for practitioners, policymakers and funders who are looking to advance this type of work. And one is that young people should be invited to explore aspects of their own heritage, or that they consider themselves to be important. Co-production must be at the heart. And we find that the most transformative work has focused upon outcomes for families, neighbourhoods, communities, and other place-based stakeholders, as well as young people. And it's in particular, it's the intercultural and intergenerational aspects which are particularly powerful and also offer the most effective value for money. It's important to say that despite the relatively significant resource that's been invested in recent years, there's no central sort of holding point for this evaluation data. And so we think that prospective projects should really commit to better capturing the learnings and outcomes of this work. And that could go hand in hand with a publicly and remotely accessible national central archive, which would improve decision-making and accountability and better grow the evidence base. And finally, proposed heritage activities must demonstrate commitments to partnership working. So how will projects work with non-heritage organisations to really share that learning and to make sure that some of the benefits are maximised and embedded in future works? And so to bring this to a close, I think the individual level benefits for arts, culture and heritage activities are well established. But we're making a specific intervention into what all of this means in the context of the Levelling Up agenda and particularly the notion of pride in place. I think it's worth saying that at the same time, we're not looking to romanticise this activity, and clearly learning more about a place could lead to young people being almost disengaged, disillusioned with the place that they live, although we didn't necessarily see that in our own work. And I think that what we're really doing is also making a strong argument for why it is that heritage, you know, what are the unique contributions that heritage can make. And so that's enough for me. Many thanks. We'd now like to pass over to some of the young people themselves who have their own stories to tell.
Thanks, Josh. And there was a question posted that said, what do these projects actually look like? So I'm really delighted to welcome from Connecting with Yemeni Elders Heritage Project, Abdulwais Sufyan, who is the inspiration for the project and is a Liverpool Youth Ambassador, and also Saba Ahmed, who's Community Development Worker at Liverpool 8. So a very, very warm welcome to you both, Saba and Abdulwais.
Hi,
yeah,
everyone.
You can hear us. Great. So first question then is, we've heard Josh's words about the project, but we want to hear about it in your own words. So could you tell us, who's involved, where's it happening, and what did you set out to achieve and set out to change?
Yeah, so hello everybody. Yeah, so as you heard, this is Abdul Wais, and my name is Seba. So we're here to talk about the Connecting with Yemeni Elders Heritage Project. And it was a project which brought together young people and our elders in Liverpool to celebrate Yemeni culture and also about keeping the memories of Yemen alive. So people from the ages of 14 all the way to people in their 80s were involved.
Well, that's right. The project came at a time when I was invited to the launch of my House of Memories app. And in this app, I was seeing so many different aspects and so many different images. But I was saying to myself, because my nan is living with dementia right now, my grandmother would not be able to connect with such an app. Her culture, her heritage, and her memory, she'll not be able to have this type of reconnecting with her memories back when she was in Yemen, or back when she was when she had her culture. So obviously I approached to the director, which was Carol Rogers, and I spoke to Carol and I told Carol, okay, I understand you've done this app, I understand you've done this launch, but my community, my heritage, my culture will not be able to coincide with this, or will not be able to there'll be no connection, because obviously a lot of the elders in our community are, especially in the Yemeni community, speak Arabic. So the Arabic language and the English language, obviously, if someone's speaking Arabic, speaking Arabic, will not be able to understand the English language. And obviously that's when Carol saw this as a challenge, and that's when the project was born.
Yeah. So the project was all about co-creation, and we've heard about that from Josh earlier on. But it couldn't have been successful without key cultural community organisations and an amazing community lead on the project, all coming together and working together with the museum.
So there were two important reasons why I thought it was important to me. The first one was obviously I was studying I was studying health and social care, and we were covering the module of dementia, Alzheimer, and this was when I was in year 11, so it was a few years back, and I was thinking to myself, okay, I'm able to see how it is living with someone with dementia. I'm able to see the experience, but how will other younger people, the younger generation, feel? Because they don't have the correct information or even the correct skills to help our elders. So that was the first main point. The second point as well was the reconnecting with Yemen, where they're originally from. Many of our families and family members have not been back to Yemen for 9 to 10 years. And this has created a disconnecting with our young generation. And we just thought that it's important for people to reconnect with their cultural heritage roots. When I was listening to the museums, I really thought that there should be a change, and I was happy, and we could work, and we thought we could work together to make sure that everyone's heritage is important as a whole.
And what Abdul speaks about there, Rob, is about the things that he wanted to achieve.
And so what actually did you do? What things did you do, and how were you able to connect with the heritage, which is at the very heart of this of what we're arguing makes the change?
Yeah, so actually what happened was, so the project was to create a bilingual app, so both in English and in Arabic, to highlight Yemeni heritage, and it was so exciting. But as I said before, all of its success would only be possible if it was done with the community rather than to the community. So the project took on a bilingual community lead, a lady called Miriam. She was of Yemeni heritage herself, working with the museum, who spoke Arabic, and she also lived in the area, so she had local knowledge. There are certain pockets of Liverpool where Yemenis have, they've laid down their roots, so knowing those areas was really important, and the museum taking on someone who could do all of that was part of the success of the project. We speak about those community partners, and Miriam was so brilliant at, community map, she sort of looked at the community and she asset mapped it. So who's already in the community? And there were key players. So we had organisations such as the Liverpool Arabic Centre, Al Taysir Mosque, the Cumba Amani, where I work, and the Liverpool Arabic Arts Festival. And she engaged with them as community leaders, but also with their young people and their elders to bring them in onto the project.
So when it comes to look at the aim, my primary aim was to bring young people together and get them excited about the developments of the app and bring forward their culture and heritage. So the best way to do this was obviously to throw a big party in our community centre, in our local community centre. And around 30 young people come together. It was around 15 young girls and 15 young boys. And people in this at that day, people wore traditional Yemeni clothing, food was shared, Yemeni traditional food was shared, dancing, music, and you did really feel the vibe of Yemen being brought into our local community centre. So all of this sounds obviously wonderful, but the thing that actually changed, I'd say, is the biggest change was came about with the community itself, is brought the buzz of Yemen and the excitement back to everyone post lockdown. It also brought Yemen back into the spotlight, as I could talk about the war in my home and the country when I was being interviewed in regards to the app. The young people reconnected with our elders, and even people who were non-Yemeni, like the local rabbi came that day. They all wanted to get involved. Myself and the youth group became so confident and even used the experience of working on the project to get into universities and also get jobs.
Yeah, good. Over 300 people from the local community came to that party, and it was a great way to not leave the party till the end of the project, but to start celebrating like ASAP, to get people really excited. So it's right what Abdul says. When he speaks about the buzz in Liverpool, he's just bang on. The project itself, it created a sense of pride and excitement. The community wanted to get involved, and they wanted to be part of spotlighting Yemen in one of its Liverpool museums and online. There was also a change in how communities and big institutions work together. So for too long, we talk about left behind communities like in policy, but we talk about it as under-resourced communities. And for too long, under-resourced communities have been used to support the ambitions and work of those who are bigger and richer. So we made it clear from the very beginning that this couldn't happen again. So the museums came out into our community settings, and they worked with everyone, and they included and involved everyone. And it was a really good way of the community, of the museums coming in, being part of the place and the space and the heritage and the culture before inviting us into their space, a space that we don't normally go into. This really helped the museums understand better about our cultural and our social needs, and the needs for bigger institutions to financially provide for the work that smaller community organisations do, and to support local business along the way.
So this project's been a life changer for me, in particularly as I was able to meet with local stakeholders and also be on the radio too. The experience helped me realise that I want to study communication and media in university, which I'm studying right now. And I was able to win 2 awards, one from the Liverpool City region for Young Inspirational Award 2023, and also a Dementia Hero Award from the Alzheimer's Society. I think the next steps for this project and for the project is to share the toolkit, which was created with the youth team, with other museums, so more of this type of working with communities can happen more often.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. So when it comes to talking about what's next, there are just so many positives that have been learned from this project, and there have been many lessons learned along the way. So Liverpool is a culturally rich city. Like in our postcode alone, over 60 nationalities reside in our one postcode. And this brings about a different understanding of what culture and heritage is. And it's important to building stronger, healthier and thriving communities. A sense of heritage and pride is important for people to feel part of a place. And we've spoke about that quite a bit, but also that their own roots are welcomed into that place and a part of it, and they're included and they're welcomed. The UK government, we've spoke about this, and museums and large wealthy institutions, they can do so much more to support us in communities. And I think that the next steps are around us building upon those strong relationships that are being built on in a short-term project, investing more into those relationships and the wonderful work and the changes that it can bring.
Wonderful. We could speak for hours, couldn't we? I mean, but I'm afraid we have to stop there. But just thank you so much, Abdulwais and Saba, for such an inspiring account, and just congratulations on what you've achieved. And we're so delighted that you were able to come and share your story and your experiences and the incredible change that has been driven by you, Abdulwais, just saying, hang on, this isn't good enough. So congratulations and thank you so much. And we'll enjoy seeing how it develops in your continuing success. So thank you so much. And we move from Liverpool and we're going to move to Burnley, and we're going to welcome Kenzie Chadburn, who's one of the members of Blaze Arts and is part of the Standout project. So Kenzie, are you there?
Hi, yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well. How are you? Okay.
Yeah, I'm all good.
Great.
I'm aware of time, so I'll try not to be too long.
Don't you worry. This is your time, and thanks so much for being here. So Kenzie, could you tell us about Standout then, and tell us about the project?
Yeah. So I'm here as a young producer from the LGBTQ+ community-based heritage project known as Standout, situated in Burnley, Lancashire. We're a project of Blaze Arts, with our team being composed of 5 young people, our youngest being 14 and our oldest being in their very early 20s. All of us got involved in the project after hearing about a Find Out More event for a new and upcoming LGBTQ+ project, at which stage, either through having attended this event directly or having heard about it from someone else, we signed up to be a part of the project when it launched, as we all thought it would be an interesting and unique new opportunity.
And so what did you want to achieve and what did you want to change when you got together with that group and realized there was something that needed to be done?
Well, at first, the initial idea was just for us to be a group that met weekly, providing a space for queer young people to go and be with like-minded individuals so that they felt less alone and isolated, as Burnley is a fairly rural area, and any pre-existing groups like this were for adults and older people. The idea had been suggested by a worker at Burnley Library in response to Blaze Arts asking the staff what they would like to see within the community. And not too long after its conception, the idea of Standout had quickly begun to grow. You see, when the suggestion was originally made in 2021, it was the year of the 50th anniversary of the first public meeting held by the Campaign for Homosexual Equality. And in response to this, a rainbow plaque had been put up on Burnley Library, which is where the meeting originally took place. Now, using this plaque as inspiration and the fact that the group would be working from the library, the idea of our group evolved to be more heritage themed in terms of looking into Burnley's past to uncover its queer history. From this point onwards, our goal and motivation was to change people's perception of Burnley, as the town does have a lot of LGBTQ+ history, most of which people are unaware of. This unawareness generally leads to people overlooking or just ignoring the presence the queer community has had in Burnley. And we wanted to change this and make people aware because it's just not right, really. So we're here, and in fact, we've always been here, and the queer community not only deserves to have its presence recognised, but also respected. And sometimes to get that recognition and to get that respect, you do need to stand out. That is not showing up. Yeah, don't worry about it.
Indeed you do, and you certainly have. And so tell us, what did you do? What kind of activities, things you did, things that got made, produced, exhibited?
So when we first started meeting, our goal was to create an exhibition that would commemorate the 51st anniversary of the meeting, which is when we would debut the exhibition. But as I said, we wanted to make people more aware of Burnley's queer community on a more general and broader scale too. So whilst the focus would be on the meeting, we figured we'd make the most of the spotlight we'd be getting on the day in order to draw people's awareness to other significant queer-related topics. As such, we made the most of the facilities provided to us by the library, and alongside visiting the local Burnley archives and going on a heritage walk around the town, we found ourselves learning a lot of eye-opening information. Not just that, but through our research, we were also able to get in touch with people from older generations, which was honestly such a delight because though we may be all different ages, we do all share the queer community and we all have the same history, a lot of which they actually knew better than us and they could give insight into it because they lived it. So as such, part of our exhibition would include the oral histories we had gathered with people of the queer community, as we felt it a great opportunity to give people a chance to speak and give them a chance to be heard as well. We also commissioned art for our exhibition, made banners and produced the first edition of the Standout zine. And the zine's like a magazine, but not mass produced or professionally published. And overall, the exhibition was a massive success. Not only did we have far more people than we originally anticipated, like show up, but we even had some special guests, such as the Mayor of Burnley and our local MP. And in fact, it was such a success that we began to think about what the future of Standout could be, because we had something here, something people were interested in and willing to support, and as such, it was only fair that we gave back to the community and the people. So now that people's eyes were on us, we had an opportunity to get serious about our plans and make our intentions known, which is where the second exhibition came in. For this one, we decided to put more of a focus on the people, having gathered several more oral histories with some really amazing individuals, such as Mark and Andrew, who are an older gay couple, and they're the best. And we also spoke to Mike Jackson, who was one of the real people the movie Pride was based off of, and he was one of the founders of Lesbians and Gays Support the Minders. In addition to this, we also once again released another zine, this time talking more about Standout itself in terms of its origins, what we've been up to, and what we have in store for the future. Plus, we were able to host the exhibition in a public shop front in Burnley Town Centre, and that sort of helped to drive forward the point that we mean it when we say we want to do big things. On top of this, after the first exhibition, we had to apply for more funding, and with some of the money we got, we paid for some proper training for us all, covering digital marketing, event planning and management, and some business training, all of which would help us prepare for what comes next. Plus, it's also nice to be able to pick up some skills, and along with the general confidence boost we've all gotten from working on the project, it's safe to say that Standout has benefited us in terms of our capabilities, especially when you consider the opportunities it's brought us, such as the chance to write for Burnley Football Club and to appear on the Engage podcast, and also our involvement with Standout got us invited to the ICRD Birmingham event back in October, and that's how I'm speaking today. Plus, it also gave me the opportunity to do some work experience with the ICRD team, who are just amazing for the record. I haven't been told to say that, I just want to say it because they are fab. But of course, the more that we actually do a Standout, the more windows it opens, and the more we're able to do, which in turn provides us with more opportunities to create a positive difference within Burnley. Already with the work we've done, we've managed to open both ours and other people's eyes in terms of the town history, which has definitely helped to create a sense of pride and positivity around Burnley, which then helps us to continue to do the work like we're doing, as it means we have even more support and people backing us up. The support's great for numerous reasons, one of which is that it makes it easier for us to prove that we're serious about the work. And the results of this can be seen within the crowdfund that we started a few months ago, as through donations and putting in bids to Lancashire County Council and Arts Council England, we were able to raise £36,000, which is just mind-blowing.
So what next, Kenzie?
Oh, well, the biggest thing we have coming up has got to be the Burnley Pride event that we're hosting on the 22nd of July at the Burnley Mechanics Theatre. We're planning to have a parade, performers, workshops, stalls, food, and so much more. And it's just going to be great. The majority of the people who we're reaching out to are all local as well, meaning that it's definitely going to be an event for the community. So make sure to keep your eyes open for updates about the event on Blaze Arts' social media channels, because we really are pouring our heart into this. And this isn't on my script, but I can confirm that in the next week or two, we're going to have an official press release out for it. So again, keep your eyes open for that. But aside from the Pride event, our main goals are going to be to become self-sufficient and independent as a group one day. And we also want to have an official LGBTQ+ safe space in Burnley, one that's inclusive to members of the community and to allies, without being exclusive to people who are still trying to figure this all out. There is also the idea of a cafe, like knocking about here and there. But for the past few months, our focus has been on Burnley Pride, which, as I said, is going to be great. But no matter what we do, though, it's always going to come back to the idea of contributing towards and giving back to the community as we strive to make a positive change.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kenzie. Thank you for sharing your account with such clarity and with such optimism, and the kind of the energy and pride that you have shown in really supporting your community and really bringing to light stories that need to be told for everybody is just awe-inspiring. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure and a delight. And now we're going to move on to hear from Sandra Stancliffe. And Sandra is Head of Communities, Learning, Volunteering and Inclusion at Historic England. And she has supported this research, and she's been an absolute joy to work with, along with all the Historic England team. And so, Sandra, obviously, we thank you so much for being such a great supporter. But also the reason that we've done this is we want to do something with it. And I wonder what your reflections are on this, on the process, on the findings, and what we're hearing today.
So much. I could probably talk for the rest of the day about this. The report is an embodiment, and the voices of the young people that we've heard from today encapsulates everything that I've been thinking and wanting to say about heritage and working with young people for about the last 30 years. So there is so much to say, but so I'm just going to distill out some key things that really resonated, and more importantly, tell people what Historic England is going to do with this now, because we don't want a research report that sits on a shelf and no one looks at. So the things that really resonated, one thing was the value of working with multi-agency partnerships. So bringing those different voices and communities together in places. So often public funding is really siloed in the way that it targets work with people. So it will target a particular demographic, a particular community. And there is a real value in taking a much more holistic, place-based approach to the way that we distribute funding. That really resonated with me. I think the role that heritage can play in developing social mobility for young people within places too. That's one of my key takeaways from this. There's so much learning in that we call it, it's really jargony, heritage-led regeneration. But when a place has got heritage and we want to invest in it, to make that, to regenerate that heritage and make it useful, then it's really important to acknowledge the value that working with young people can bring to that work. But of course, that can only happen if that is done in an inclusive way. And we need to make sure that we continue to challenge the narrative around heritage and what is heritage, who gets to decide what heritage is, and who gets to decide what is done with it as a consequence. There's so much in there for our policy role and the way that we can support government in their ambitions to deliver levelling up. I much prefer the regional inequality description. I think Josh's phrasing of that was really clever earlier. From this report, when we commissioned it, more than anything, I wanted to distill out what the real value that heritage brings to these conversations. So often we talk about, and we've talked for years about, the value of working with young people and the value for young people in developing those things like skills. We've heard from people in the report about develop their confidence, their public speaking skills which led directly to employment. Of course, that is absolutely fundamental and needs to be part of any work with young people for it to have value. But I'd always felt that there was something missing from the evaluations of the heritage work that missed out the thing that heritage brought to the picture, what made it special. And I think that the work that that Josh has done in bringing all of this together really foregrounds that, so that the research really shows clearly the value that heritage brings to helping young people explore identity and sense of belonging. You can't do place-based regeneration investment if you don't engender a sense of civic pride and local pride and a sense of belonging. And heritage, I think the report actually says that in one place that heritage is almost unique in its power to do that. And I don't think that in the heritage sector we have made enough of that in the past.
Why is that, do you think, Sandra?
Because lots of reasons. I think if you work in heritage, you can begin to take that for granted and not really articulate it very clearly. I think it's massively under-researched, so we don't have the academic rigor that builds those connections between heritage and sense of pride and belonging. That is beginning to change, and we are beginning to showcase lots of research that does make those connections now. We'll be publishing more research which looks at the whole area about heritage and people and how they interact in coming months in Historic England. I think that one of the key things that Historic England does is we act as an advisor to government, and so there is a real role for us here in amplifying the findings of this research in our conversations with government. So we speak frequently with the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, who are our sponsor body, and within that department there is a heritage team and an arts team. There is also the Office for Civil Society and Youth, and that's really important that they are able to understand the findings of this report and what that means for their work. But also we work closely with the Department for Education in the context of the developing national plan for cultural education. And so we can make sure that the recommendations and the findings of the research are fed into the conversations we're having around that. There are some really tangible things that are probably more meaningful for a lot of people too. We have some new grant opportunities, so new funding opportunities, which build on some of the recommendations. So we will be launching later in the year, relaunching actually, because it'll be the second phase of a grants programme which celebrates working class heritage. It's called Everyday Heritage, and they're small grants for organisations to showcase everyday heritage, the heritage that surrounds us, that it's not necessarily been designated in any way as being official heritage. But really interestingly, at the moment, live at the moment, is an opportunity, if you live in the north of England, to apply for grants, and therefore young people aged 13 to 25 to create place markers, to decide what is significant, what stories need to be told, and then create really interesting ways of interpreting that. The closing date for that is on the 14th of July, so get smart about it if you're interested. And the other thing that we're doing that will be of interest to people is much later this year, we'll be developing a social impact measurement framework and toolkit. One of the recommendations was around creating a structure around the way that we evaluate this kind of work and talk about it. So we are doing that, and we'll be making that freely available to the sector, and in making sure that our own grant funding programmes actually create a coherent narrative around that. And the other thing I just wanted to mention was another piece of research we'll be publishing really soon, which has been developed in partnership with the Youth United Foundation, which is the umbrella organisation for the uniformed organisations, so the Scouts and the Guides and the cadet movements, which looks at the ways in which we could have a better strategic relationship and opportunity to make sure that heritage is a part of the work of those organisations too. That piece of research will be coming relatively soon. I just wanted to say before I finish, thank you so much to you and your team, Rob, and to the university, who have been an absolute pleasure. It's been a while, you know, there was a pandemic that got in the way and all of that, but also so to the young people that we've heard from today, who spoke so powerfully and passionately about this work. And if we can do anything in Historic England, it is to amplify the voices of those young people that we've heard from today. And that could be the most important thing, I think, that we can do, because people need to hear from young people like those and the others that were featured in the report.
Thank you so much, Sandra. We've decided not to have the Q&A because we wanted more time with the participants, but we promised that we will answer all the questions and send that out in a fact sheet. So could we just go back to Josh and just for a final comment, just about what ICRD are doing next, and certainly the work. I know you're back in Boston, Josh, aren't you?
I am, yes. So firstly, thanks so much to all the groups that followed, and thanks to Sandra as well. And yes, just a few words on what next, really. So a project that we're running at the ICRD is in Boston, in Lincolnshire. Cosmopolitan Boston, and it's all about sort of embedding the recommendations and some of the learning from this work and taking that into a context in Boston, where we're going to be doing community heritage work. We're employing and training a group of community researchers to go out and explore the heritage of the town, and that will sort of culminate in a public celebration of the work later on in the year. Very much with sort of co-creation at its heart. There's been so much to learn from the projects we've looked at, and it's great to be able to take some of that learning forward. So please keep an eye out for that work, and you can do so via the ICRD website.
Thanks, Josh. And that is now the end of our time together. And we hope you found this is a good way to spend an hour. And we thank you so much for your time and your attention and your interest in today's session. As Josh says, if you're interested in talking more to us about this, please do be in touch. Our contacts will be coming with the follow-up email. We're really passionate about the potential for this way of working and for heritage to be a really significant and much more celebrated and highlighted resource and way of working that can impact on these what are socially wicked problems. And we also want to see as much impact from the research because we've put a lot into it and we care deeply about it. So we'd like to thank our BSL interpreters, Richard and Louise, thank you so much. Our brilliant participants, Saba, Abdulways, Kenzie and Sandra. And I also like to thank Johanna and Felicity from the Arts Connect team who've produced and promoted and made all this possible. So that's it. Thank you very much. And I hope you all have a lovely afternoon and goodbye.